Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of ancient Egypt, has long stood as one of history's most enigmatic and dramatic figures. Known for her political savvy, commanding intellect, and romantic alliances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, Cleopatra's life has been immortalized in literature, art, and film for centuries. Yet while much has been said about her power and passion, the truth surrounding her death has remained elusive. Traditionally, it was believed she died by the bite of an asp, a tale immortalized by Shakespeare and echoed in countless historical accounts. But historians have always questioned this version. Could a queen, known for her meticulous planning and scientific curiosity, really leave her fate to a snake hidden in a fruit basket? Now, after decades of scholarly debate and new analysis of ancient sources, researchers believe they may have finally solved the riddle of Cleopatra's death. The fall of a dynasty.
Cleopatra's relationship with Caesar gives her immense power and immense possibilities.
Cleopatra's final days were marked by the unraveling of everything she had fought to preserve. After the crushing defeat at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, where her fleet and that of Mark Antony were routed by Octavian's forces, the Queen of Egypt returned to Alexandria with her authority in shambles. What followed was a rapid disintegration of her dynasty and any remaining hope of independence. She took swift and brutal action against those in her court who had celebrated her defeat, stripping their estates, confiscating sacred treasures, and consolidating what wealth remained into her mausoleum. This tomb, ornate and fortified, became both a sanctuary and a stage from which Cleopatra planned her final act. Within the palace, Mark Antony, devastated by false reports of Cleopatra's suicide, fell on his sword in despair. Mortally wounded but still alive, he was brought to Cleopatra's tomb in a rope sling through an upper window. Their reunion was filled with grief and symbolism. He died in her arms after sharing a final cup of wine. Cleopatra, by then disillusioned and surrounded by betrayal, took one final stand. She knew Octavian intended to capture her alive and parade her through the streets of Rome as a living trophy. The fate that her younger sister Arsinoe had suffered at Caesar's hands haunted her. Cleopatra refused to be displayed as the fallen queen of Egypt. Octavian's interest in Cleopatra was pragmatic. Beyond her status as a symbol of his triumph, she had immense treasures hidden within her tomb. He sent messages to reassure her of her safety, perhaps even suggesting he admired her or would treat her kindly. Cleopatra was not fooled. She recognized his words for what they were: manipulation. She responded by locking herself away, sending Octavian a sealed letter requesting only that she be buried beside Antony. When his men arrived, it was too late. Cleopatra lay lifeless, adorned in royal garments, surrounded by gold, with her servants Eros and Charmian dead or dying by her side. This tableau, so vividly recorded by Plutarch, suggested not a desperate act of fear, but a meticulously planned farewell. Even the crown on her head, adjusted by a dying Charmian, reinforced her image as a queen to the very end. Cleopatra had controlled her life and would control her death. But how she died, what method she chose, remains the central mystery, and one modern historians are now closer than ever to answering. The snake or the salve?
The most famous account by far is that by Plutarch. Now, I think the reason why his account is so famous because he says that his source is Cleopatra's physician Olympus. But it's difficult to know which part is by Olympus and where it becomes Plutarch's imagination. We don't actually have any writings by Olympus to go on, so we have to take his word for it. But what he tells us is that a peasant carried the snake in a basket full of figs, and the snake was concealed under some leaves. And then Cleopatra took the snake, put it on her arm, and let it bite her. And this is what killed her.
The classic version of Cleopatra's death centers on a snake, a symbolically charged image of a queen taking her life with the venom of an asp smuggled in a basket of figs. Ancient writers like Strabo, Plutarch, and Dio Cassius all mention this possibility, and Roman propaganda quickly embraced the image. It played perfectly into the narrative of an exotic Eastern temptress undone by her own devices, feeding Western audiences a neat, dramatic conclusion. In Roman triumphs, Cleopatra's effigy was even paraded with a sculpted snake coiled on her arm. But is this what really happened? The asp bite, though rich in symbolic overtones, presents practical problems. Asp venom causes a slow and painful death. Yet, according to ancient reports, Cleopatra died quickly and peacefully. And some accounts suggest there were 2 or even 3 deaths in that chamber, hers and those of her attendants. A single snake wouldn't have enough venom for all 3. and no serpent was ever found. Cobras, a possible alternative, do dispense a lethal dose in one bite and held mythological significance in Egyptian iconography. Still, their size would make them difficult to smuggle undetected, and the logistics of deploying more than one cobra in such a controlled environment strained credibility. Cleopatra was nothing if not meticulous. This was a woman who had reportedly tested various poisons on prisoners to determine which caused the least suffering. According to Plutarch, she preferred the asp because it caused a gentle sleepiness, but this also could have been misdirection. Ancient writers note that Cleopatra may have used a poison ointment hidden in a hollow hairpin or comb. These would have been easier to conceal, quicker to act, and more consistent with the reports of her death's serene appearance. Such a method also aligns with Egyptian funerary practices, where death and adornment were often intertwined. Further support for the poison theory comes from Galen, who wrote that Cleopatra may have bitten her own arm and applied a toxic salve to the wound. This aligns with Dio's mention of 2 small pricks on her arm and Strabo's speculation that she could have used a pin coated with poison. If so, this would point not to theatrical animal symbolism, but to a calculated chemical end, one befitting a queen who embraced both science and spectacle. Recent scholarly opinion increasingly favors poison over snakebite, noting that Cleopatra's knowledge of pharmacology would have allowed her to die on her own terms, quickly and without risk of interruption. The political stage.
How strangely awake I feel, as if living had been just a long dream. Someone else's dream, now finished at last. But that now will begin a dream of my own.
Cleopatra's death was as much about politics as personal loss. She wasn't merely escaping capture, she was orchestrating a legacy. By dying before Octavian could present her in chains, she denied him the image he wanted to project, of Roman superiority over a humbled Eastern monarch. This was no small gesture. Cleopatra had long fashioned herself as Isis reborn, and her rule was steeped in divine symbolism. Her death, like her life, had to serve a purpose beyond survival. It needed to preserve her image in the face of annihilation. Her death also had immediate political consequences. Octavian, now Caesar Augustus, could declare a decisive victory with no loose ends. Caesarion, Cleopatra's son with Julius Caesar, was executed, erasing any potential rival to Roman authority. Her other children by Mark Antony were taken to Rome and raised by Octavia, Antony's Roman wife, ensuring they were stripped of any Egyptian influence. Cleopatra's suicide closed the curtain on the Ptolemaic dynasty, allowing Octavian to absorb Egypt into the Roman Empire and stabilize his power base. Yet, Cleopatra's death did not yield only to Roman ambition. By ensuring she died as a queen, not a captive, she shaped the narrative that would follow her for millennia. Artists, writers, and historians, from Shakespeare to Hollywood, have depicted her as tragic, romantic, and courageous. That legacy was not accidental. Cleopatra controlled the optics of her downfall as tightly as she had manipulated her alliances. She left behind not a broken woman, but a legend. A queen's final message. Cleopatra's final note to Octavian, requesting only to be buried beside Antony, was her last act of defiance. It underscored her humanity and her loyalty to the man she loved, but it also served a shrewd political purpose. By focusing her final words on love and death rather than rebellion or vengeance, she ensured that her death would be remembered as noble rather than treasonous. This helped protect the memory of her children and possibly swayed public opinion in the years following. The visual of Cleopatra laid on a golden couch, adorned in her finest robes, surrounded by treasure and loyal servants, was a scene staged as deliberately as any royal procession. Even the small detail of her crown being adjusted in her final moments by Charmian created a symbolic image of continuity and grace. It was a spectacle, one aimed at creating a lasting impression, not just on Octavian, but on history itself. Modern conclusions.
Some historians believe Cleopatra took her own life. but she didn't take the easy way out.
Modern historians and Egyptologists increasingly lean toward the poison theory as the most plausible explanation. The asp tale, while iconic, is riddled with inconsistencies in theatrics. Cleopatra's deep knowledge of pharmacology, her access to exotic substances, and her reported testing of poisons on human subjects suggest she was fully capable of choosing a precise method. Add to this the clean and peaceful appearance of her body, and it becomes clear a well-planned ingestion or topical application of poison is more likely than a chaotic snakebite. Forensic limitations make definitive proof impossible, but the weight of circumstantial evidence tilts in favor of poison. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you believe Cleopatra died by snakebite? Or do you think poison was the real method? Let us know in the comments section below.